They told me I was a burden, and then left me in the woods to die. My name is Ava Mitchell. I'm 17 years old, and I never thought the woman who gave birth to me would become the person I feared most. That day in the forest, when my mother turned her back and walked away without hesitation, something inside me broke, something I thought was unbreakable. Before all of this, we lived in a worn-down trailer on the outskirts of Millers Creek, Michigan, a place so small that secrets often suffocated behind closed doors. After my dad died in a trucking accident when I was 9, my mom, Janet Mitchell, changed. Grief, alcohol, and loneliness transformed her from a loving parent to a stranger I barely recognized. But the real nightmare began when she met Victor Lane, a man who called himself a business consultant but gave off the cold charm of someone who always had a plan, and not a good one. From the moment he stepped into our lives, Victor made it clear I wasn't welcome. "Your daughter is present," he had sneered the first night, like I was an inconvenience he'd need to get rid of. And eventually, that's exactly what they tried to do. What they didn't know was that someone had been watching, someone who would ensure the truth came to light in a way none of us could have imagined. From the moment Victor Lane moved in, everything changed. His cologne filled the air like poison, and his eyes, calculating, always watching, made it clear he saw me as a problem to be erased. Within a week, he turned our small living room into his office, tossed out the couch where Dad and I used to read together, and claimed my bedroom as his own. I was forced into the tiny storage room, 8 feet by 6, with no window and barely enough space to lie down. My photos of Dad vanished, along with any shred of comfort. Victor dictated everything: how long I could shower, when I could eat, where I could sit, and even what I could wear. And Mom? She followed his lead like a shadow. The woman who once braided my hair for school plays now locked the fridge at night and barked his cruel rules as if they were her own commandments. I tried to disappear into school activities, into my best friend Maya Chen's backyard, or behind my father's old camera lens. But home always waited, colder, harsher, emptier. My mother, once warm and steady, had become a stranger. "You're so ungrateful," she'd snap. "Victor provides. You just take." But the worst came the night I overheard them talking. I pressed my ear to the paper-thin trailer walls as Victor whispered, "She's almost 18, but that's still months away. We can't wait that long." My mom's silence was louder than any scream. Then she answered, "What are you suggesting?" She knew. She just needed him to say it aloud. "I'm suggesting we remove the burden," Victor said. That's when I knew. I wasn't just unwanted. I was in danger. I stopped sleeping after that night. Every creak of the trailer made my heart lurch. Every hushed conversation between Victor and Mom felt like a countdown to something terrible. I started packing a small bag, just in case. A flashlight, Dad's old survival book, a cracked first aid kit, and the $42 I had stashed behind a loose floorboard in the storage room. I even found Mom's deactivated burner phone in a drawer. It couldn't call, but it still took photos, and that might be enough someday. Victor announced the surprise camping trip a few days later. "We all need some family time," he said, grinning at me like a wolf in a nice suit. Mom nodded, eyes avoiding mine, clutching her wine glass like a lifeline. My stomach turned. I knew then, I wasn't coming back. That night, I left a sealed envelope in Maya Chen's mailbox. Inside was a letter detailing everything I'd overheard. I ended it with, "If I don't text you by Friday, show this to the police." It was my only chance. Friday morning came fast. Victor drove us deep into the Michigan wilderness. Past any familiar roads. No trail markers. No cell service. I memorized the turns, the trees, the broken fence we passed. Survival mode had kicked in. We hiked miles into the forest. Victor was all fake cheer and forced jokes. But Mom barely spoke. She jumped at every twig snap, but didn't turn back. When Victor announced he had to go back to the car for a forgotten cooler, something in her changed. Her jaw set, her eyes hardened. "He's not coming back, is he?" I asked. She didn't answer. I already knew the truth. She wasn't just letting it happen. She was helping. My throat tightened as I watched my mother kneel to retie her bootlaces for the third time. Anything to avoid meeting my eyes. The forest around us felt heavier than before. The silence louder, broken only by distant crows and the rustle of leaves. He's not coming back, is he? I asked again, this time louder. Her fingers froze on the laces. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw guilt flicker across her face. But it vanished as quickly as it came. She stood, brushing invisible dirt from her jacket. You're 17, Ava, not a child. You'll figure it out. I blinked. You brought me out here to die. Her shoulders tensed, but she didn't deny it. You were always so needy. She continued, her voice cold, unfamiliar, always wanting more time, more attention, more than I could give. She kicked at my backpack, sending it tumbling toward the edge of the clearing. I lunged for it, but she blocked my path. No, you don't get to take that, she said, unzipping the bag and dumping its contents onto the dirt. You want independence? This is it. I stood frozen as she pocketed the small stash of cash I'd hidden in my father's survival guide. My last safety net, gone. Please, Mom, I begged, my voice breaking. Whatever he told you, whatever he promised, he's lying. You don't have to do this. Her laugh was bitter, hollow. He's the only one who ever believed in me. Not as some tired waitress or struggling single mom, but as someone worth something. Tears burned down my cheeks. I'm your daughter. She slapped me. Not a warning, not hesitation, full force. You're nothing but a burden. She hissed, and I'm done carrying you. She turned and walked away, back the way Victor had gone, leaving me kneeling in the dirt, alone, heart shattered, and truly abandoned. But even then, something inside me whispered, you're still alive. Fight. As the sound of her footsteps faded into the woods, I stood frozen, the sting of her slap still burning on my cheek. The air was cold now, not just from the changing weather, but from the weight of what had happened. My own mother had left me to die. No food, no water, no way back, just me and the forest. But after the sobs passed, raw and ragged, something inside me clicked. I wasn't going to die here. Not like this. My dad had taught me enough during those camping trips before he passed. The first rule in the wild, Ava, he'd always said, is to stay calm. You panic, you die. I scanned the clearing, gathering the scattered remnants of my pack. Most of my supplies were gone, taken or dumped, but I found the old flip phone tucked in my jacket's inner pocket. No signal, of course. Just a faint flashlight and a half-charged battery. Better than nothing. The sun was dipping fast. I needed shelter. I recalled what Dad had taught me. Find high ground. Avoid valleys where cold air sinks. And never sleep near standing water. My eyes caught a thick oak tree with overhanging branches. I used fallen limbs to construct a crude lean-to and lined it with dry leaves for insulation. Not pretty, but enough to survive the night. When darkness fell, so did the temperature. My stomach growled. I pulled my jacket tight and curled into myself. I kept the phone's light off, preserving the battery. The stars flickered above through the branches. Polaris. Dad taught me to use it for direction. Maybe tomorrow, I'd follow it southwest. Maybe I'd find help. But tonight, I'd survive. Because no matter what my mother thought, I was not a burden. I was a fighter. And I was not done yet. Morning light broke through the canopy like hope-piercing despair. My body ached. My throat was dry. But I was alive. Every instinct told me to move. To find water. To keep going. Following the slope of the land. I hiked downhill through thick underbrush until the sound of trickling water guided me to a narrow stream. I knelt, cupped the icy water in my hands, and drank deeply. The cold bit my palms, but it tasted like survival. As I sat catching my breath, I sensed it again, that unmistakable feeling of being watched. At first, I thought it was just paranoia, my brain still playing tricks. But then I heard a branch crack, not like a deer or small animal, but purposeful, deliberate. I turned toward the sound and froze. Emerging from the trees was a figure I recognized, Elijah Monroe. Our quiet elderly neighbor from across the street. His flannel shirt was wrinkled, his hiking boots muddied, and in his hand was a professional camera with a long lens. He raised both arms slightly, signaling peace. "Hello, Ava," he said gently. "I'm glad I found you." I blinked, too stunned to reply. He approached cautiously, as if I might run or vanish into the woods. I followed you, he explained. I saw them take you. I documented everything. I sat in silence as he pulled a granola bar from his backpack and handed it to me. My hands trembled as I opened it. You saw? I finally whispered. He nodded. All of it. I have proof. In that moment, I wasn't just a discarded daughter anymore. I was a witness, and now, thanks to Elijah, someone had witnessed me too. As we walked slowly through the dense forest, Elijah kept a steady pace beside me, occasionally offering a hand when the terrain grew tricky. My legs were sore, my ankles still tender, but I pressed on, fueled now by a quiet determination. I needed to get out of these woods, not just to survive, but to be heard. You're about 4 miles from the nearest ranger station, Elijah said, checking his watch. We'll get there before sunset if we keep this pace. I nodded, too exhausted for words, but inside me, questions burned. Why had he followed us? How did he know? What exactly had he seen? Reading my silence, he answered without prompting. I've been watching your house for a while, Ava, ever since that man, Derek, moved in. Something about him, it didn't sit right. The way your mother changed. The way you disappeared from the porch. From school, it reminded me too much of stories I've covered before. You were a journalist, I said, half statement, half question. He nodded. Chicago Tribune. 30 years. Covered some of the worst kinds of family abuse cases. You learn what danger looks like, even when it's hidden behind smiles and Sunday church clothes. His voice was steady, but there was a sadness beneath it, a weight of having seen too much. I couldn't intervene without proof. He continued, but yesterday, when I saw them packing camping gear, I knew. I grabbed my camera and followed. I stayed far enough back to not tip them off. Took photos. I have everything. Ava, them leaving you, your mother dumping your pack, her walking away. My throat tightened. So, you believe me? He stopped, turning to face me. I don't just believe you. I have evidence. The words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I'd lived like a ghost in my own home. Unseen, unheard, but now, with Elijah walking beside me and his camera full of proof slung across his back, I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't just surviving, I was going to be believed. As the ranger station came into view, a small wooden structure nestled among tall pines, my knees nearly buckled, not from exhaustion, but relief. Elijah steadied me, his camera bag still slung over one shoulder, a symbol of everything he had captured, and everything he had protected. Inside, the Rangers reacted with initial skepticism. Another teen. Another dramatic story. But Elijah wasted no time. He connected his camera to their computer. And within moments, the room fell into stunned silence. Photo after photo flashed across the screen. Derek leading the hike. My mother carrying a nearly empty backpack. The two of them walking away from the clearing, leaving me behind. Then, the final blow. An image of my mother mid-shout. Her hand raised, my face turned in recoil. A perfect snapshot of abandonment, rage, and betrayal. Jesus, one ranger muttered. Another picked up the radio. Dispatch, we need immediate police support and medical assistance at the secondary station. We have a confirmed case of child abandonment, possible premeditated. Elijah stepped aside to let the officers do their job. I followed them far enough to stay hidden, but close enough to document everything. He explained, I wasn't going to let her disappear without a witness. They took me to a back room, offered water, a blanket, and asked me to recount everything, this time. Not as a scared teenager trying to be believed, but as a victim finally being heard. That night, I was placed into protective custody while law enforcement located my mother and Derek, who had just reported me missing hours earlier. Their lies crumbled the moment the officers presented the photos. It wasn't just my word anymore. It was evidence. And for the first time since I was abandoned in those woods, the truth was on my side. The hours that followed felt like a whirlwind. After giving my statement and receiving medical care for my bruises and dehydration, the Rangers informed me that my mother and Derek had been found. Just hours earlier, they had walked into a nearby ranger station with a rehearsed tale of panic. She wandered off while we were setting up camp. We searched for hours before hiking back out to get help. But now, with Elijah's photographs and my detailed account, That narrative collapsed. The police arranged for us to be taken to the main station for a confrontation. I didn't know how I'd feel seeing them again, but I knew I needed to look them in the eyes and watch their story fall apart. When we entered the station, my mother leapt up dramatically, her voice trembling. "Emma, thank God you're safe." I didn't move. The female detective blocked her advance. "Mrs. Anderson, we'd like you and Mr. Hartman to take a seat. We have some questions about your missing person report." Derek maintained his mask of calm. "Of course, officer." We were frantic. The detective gestured to a monitor. "Interesting, because we have footage that tells a very different story." One by one, Elijah's photos filled the screen. Derek's smugness drained with each image. His body visibly stiffened when the photo of him leaving the woods alone appeared. Then, the final photo, my mother mid-slap, her face twisted with rage, and the timestamp that proved when it happened. The room was silent. That's not what it looks like." My mother stammered. Elijah stepped forward. "It's exactly what it looks like. And it's all documented." As the officers handcuffed them, my mother finally looked at me, not with anger, but with a strange flicker of something that might have been shame. But it was too late. This time, I wasn't the invisible girl in the corner. I was the survivor, and justice had just begun. Back at the ranger station, as Derek and my mother were taken into custody, the reality of what had happened began to settle over me, not like a storm, but like a slow, heavy fog. Officers asked me questions in calm, patient tones. A nurse checked my vitals again. Someone brought me a warm blanket, and Elijah never left my side. That night, I stayed in a temporary foster home with a kind older couple named the Parkers. Their house smelled of cinnamon and lavender. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept in a room with a real bed, clean sheets, and no locks on the refrigerator. It felt strange to be safe. The next morning, the detectives shared news that hit me harder than anything else. Derek, whose real name turned out to be Daniel Hoffman, had a history. 2 previous girlfriends had also reported their teenage daughters missing under suspicious circumstances, but those cases had gone cold due to lack of evidence. Until now, one detective leaned in and said, "Your story might be what finally helps bring justice to those families too." It wasn't just about me anymore. My voice, my survival, mattered in a way I hadn't realized. Elijah and I sat on the back porch that afternoon as the sun dipped low in the sky. He looked at me through tired, kind eyes and said, "You saved yourself out there, Emma, but your story? That's going to save others." That was when I knew I had to tell it, not just for me, but for anyone who'd ever felt discarded, unloved, or invisible. I picked up my dad's old camera and snapped a photo of the setting sun through the trees. For the first time, it wasn't just about surviving. It was about reclaiming my life, and helping others do the same. The weeks that followed were a blur of courtroom meetings, therapy sessions, and media inquiries, but through it all, something inside me began to shift, from brokenness to clarity. For the first time in years, I had people who believed me. The Parkers, Elijah, Ms. Rivera, and Lily. Each of them held up a mirror, not to the girl I had been forced to become, but to the girl I truly was, resilient, thoughtful, capable. Elijah, ever the quiet mentor, began encouraging me to write down everything I had experienced, not just for the court, but for myself. "Telling your story is how you take your power back," he told me one evening, handing me a worn leather journal. At first, it felt too raw, too close, but as I began writing, the pain slowly transformed into something more: awareness, strength, even purpose. I launched a small blog under a pseudonym, sharing my story piece by piece. To my surprise, messages began to pour in. Teenagers, foster parents, trauma survivors. Each had their own version of abandonment and survival. One comment stuck with me. "Reading your words helped me realize I'm not alone. Thank you for surviving, for us." That was the moment I realized my pain had a purpose beyond my own healing. I started volunteering with a local youth support group, helping kids spot signs of manipulation and emotional abuse. My camera, once my only form of escape, became a tool of advocacy. I began documenting stories, not just mine, but those of others like me. With the same quiet power Elijah's lens once offered, the courtroom drama might have ended. But my story was only beginning. I wasn't just a survivor of what they did to me. I was a creator of what came next. As autumn returned 1 year later, I found myself standing at the edge of the same forest where I was once left behind, no longer as a victim, but as a survivor. The leaves crunched under my boots, the same way they did that day. But the fear had faded. What remained was something far more powerful: resilience. Looking back, I've come to understand that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes, it's built through compassion, presence, and the willingness to stand beside someone when the world turns away. Elijah, the Parkers, Lily, they didn't save me because they had to. They did it because it was right. Life lesson? It's this: the people who walk into your life during your darkest moments, the ones who choose to stay, are the ones who define what love truly means. And sometimes, we need to let go of who hurt us to make space for who helps us heal. If you've ever felt abandoned, unseen, or unloved, I want you to know this: you are not alone. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Speech balloon, tell us in the comments, who has been your unexpected guardian in life? Red heart like if this story touched your heart. Bell, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, real-life stories that remind us we're never truly alone. Thank you for listening. You're stronger than you think.